Welcome to Season 2 of Coming Home to Ourselves, where we aim to bridge the gap between the sacred and modern-day responsibilities, barriers, and life. I am Denise Alyssa, your host, channel, mystic, and guide, and I aim to empower you to become your own self-healer and an embodied co-creator of your life, supporting you in shedding what no longer serves and aligning you with your most authentic and connected version of self. Please note that I am not a medical professional and nothing said in this podcast should be misconstrued as medical advice or replacement of such. If you'd like to know more about my background, training, or the workshops, ceremonies, or other work I offer, please visit www.denisealyssa.com. Hello, friends. So today I want to welcome back Eileen March, certified life coach, wild medicine energy healer, and slow living witch, but most recently also an author, back to the studio. So Eileen, thank you so much for being here with us today, back here. And I know in our last recording that released in October 2025, we left so much on the table that we were still hoping to discuss. So some of what I'm really hoping that we can touch on today is the benefits of allowing ourselves to be bored, embracing unproductive time and the quiet, which I know is so impossible for so many people in this society. And it also really contributes to a lot of the health conditions that I live with and that my client, the people that I work with a lot of the time live with as well. I'd love to go deeper into what it looks like to attune to our cyclical nature. I know that that's like your jam, that's your thing. And I've just released my own new series on this as well last fall. So I would also love to hear, what are each of the seasons in your perspective and how do they show up within ourselves?
Thank you for having me back. I'm excited to dive into all these topics. I was so honored when you reached out and said, "Do you want to come back?" And I was like, "Yes, we need to we need to keep this conversation going because it was a good one."
Oh, I'm so glad to have you. So where do you want to begin? Should we just start on the first point, like the benefits of allowing ourselves to be bored? And I think that weaves right into the next one of embracing unproductive time and the quiet, because man, that's something that I'm advocating a lot for in my household right now. And as a parent, it's something that I have felt that I'm really, if I don't work that into my parenting, that I'm really I would almost go so far as to say is harming my child. That's an extreme statement, but I feel like I'm doing a disservice to my child or my children if I don't create those spaces to allow them to be bored and to weave unproductive time and quiet and rest and really boredom. That's the word that keeps coming up in my household, that I'm like, we have to create this space for them to be bored, and we're really doing them a disservice if we don't.
Yeah, I think you're so right. It is such an important part of being a human, and creativity. It's a topic that I've spoken to many people about, that idea of letting ourselves and our kids be bored. I don't have children myself, but many of my dear friends do. And when I think back to my own childhood, yes, there was TV, there was things I could do to stimulate myself, but there was a lot less of it, it felt like. And for many of us, I know myself included, there was some serious limits on it. I was allowed 3 half-hour shows a week and an hour of cartoons in the morning on the weekends. And that was all the screen time I got all week.
Okay, so I was a screen time kid. But when I say that I was a screen time kid, what I mean is that I don't remember having any limits on it. The TV was there, the computer was there, but our computer was a desktop in our kitchen that was facing, in a corner of our kitchen that was facing outward so that anybody in our kitchen could see what I was doing on it, right?
Yes.
And whether that was by design or just where it fit in my house, I don't know. But back then you didn't have personal computers and things like that. So any of these household items TV, computer, internet, any of those things were typically like a public resource to your household,
Yeah. Yeah, they
right?
were shared family space.
Yeah. So I would be in my kitchen while my mom's cooking dinner and my dad's at the dinner table and people are moving around me, or I'd be in
Mm-hmm.
the shared living room with our TV where somebody else was probably going to like pop in and join me, or if they weren't going to pop in and join me, you at least knew that they might walk in at any minute. Like
Yeah.
there was there was
Yes.
never an assumption of privacy in
Yeah,
any
no.
in any way,
Not even a
right?
little
It's
bit.
not like it is now where, you know, teenagers all have like their private cell phones and their laptops and um
Mm-hmm.
there is this perceived sense of privacy on
Mm-hmm.
those personal devices.
Yeah. Yeah, there is for sure. And like in terms of taking us back to that idea of being bored and letting ourselves, again, if you're in your public place on the screen, sure, there's not a limit, but you're not going to go down the same rabbit holes, I think, that sometimes we get
Exactly.
sucked into when nobody's watching. And so we put those self limits on. And it's so important for creativity and for self-regulation. Those are the two things that come up. And like they've done so many studies, we've got oodles of evidence to show that boredom it breeds creativity. That's where imagination gets to thrive. And that's how we get new inventions and new things coming into the world, new ideas birthed into the world. And behaviorally too, that ability to self-regulate, we know that goes down with increased screen time in kids. And so with those two things alone are as much evidence as I need to say like
Yeah,
boredom is important.
I know. And, I think one other factor that has really changed since back then is that you didn't have anything on demand back then.
Yeah.
So if I got up and I started like Saturday morning cartoons, within like 30 minutes to an hour, like your shows are
Are
done.
over.
Even if you were like, yeah, even if you had multiple of them, like, two shows, half an hour, they're done. And now there's nothing else until whatever next time of, evening TV or whatever it was. So then you turned it off and you
Mm-hmm.
went and did something else. Like there was a natural um boredom or like
Conclusion point.
conclusion like built in, whereas now you have TikTok and YouTube and
Mm-hmm.
all of these short form content that like you just go like one after another. The next one starts right away whether you start it or not. Even on like
Yeah.
some of the streaming providers now, you finish your show and the next one starts
Oh
before
yeah.
you have even like consented, even if it's not even like the same series.
Series.
Like it
Oh,
literally just
interesting.
starts a new movie or it starts a new show or whatever. And before you know it, you're like, what am I watching? This isn't what I turned on. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's designed to suck you in and to keep you there,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, I think it works. The design that they have
It
does
does.
exactly what they want it to do, and it keeps you there. And so there's not those built-in factors. My daughter
Mm-hmm.
is well, she'll be 5 at the time of releasing this episode. She will have just turned 5 and she is still screen free.
Oh, so
And
good.
that was a really big that was something that I just knew in my gut that was the right decision for us. And it's not a judgment on anyone who utilizes screens. And I won't even get into the conversation around like neurodivergency and screens because I know that there's a lot of families who feel that screens are really a requirement for neurodivergent people to regulate because the world
Mm,
itself is just so hard and everything that they're navigating is so hard that then they get to kind of like rest into like the safety of this predictability and something that they have control over and all of that. And so I do want to honor that within what I'm
mm-hmm.
saying, because I understand that I don't know what I don't know and that I'm not going to make assumptions for other people. But for myself and my family, even though neurodivergency is a big factor in that, I just knew even while I was pregnant that that was what I needed to do, that that was like the right choice for us. And it was a big going against the grain for our
Yeah.
families. And even like we're a blended family as well. So there's factors there where kids before my daughter are not screen free, and we're not ever screen free.
Right.
But yeah, I think like the grandparents had a pretty hard time with it, like pretty hard time
Mm-hmm.
adjusting. And I would say that they don't actually respect, like not all of the grandparents respect that boundary in the same way. Like they do kind of their own thing when they have her. So when I say she's screen free at home.
Mm-hmm.
We even sent her to a daycare who on the first day we found out that they do like half an hour of screen time every single day. And I was like so blown away. Like I was like, how is that not a warning in your package?
Yeah.
How do you not
Yeah.
prepare us for that? And
Yeah.
they were like, yeah, this is just what we do. Like it was normal for them. And we're no longer with that daycare. The daycare we're with now does not use screens, but I just can't believe that it's such a normal part of everything that even
Yeah.
like a daycare for 3-year-olds did not
Has
think to
screen
like
time.
prepare us for that.
Right. Yeah, it is. It's
Right? I
just
was just
a
so
normal
blown
part of
away.
life for
Yeah.
most people.
Yeah.
Um, and again, yeah, no judgment passed, because yes, it's a tool, and yes, parents are overwhelmed and tired and managing all the things, and sometimes the easiest thing to do is to park your kiddo in front of a screen. I mean, I know my parents did that with the TV with me and
Yeah.
my sister to some
Same.
extent, within limits, but there is just that like that sense of when it becomes too much and all consuming, and it's the only way that they can self-soothe, or it's
Yeah.
the only thing they're asking for, or they spend hours in front of it, it's like we're robbing them of that imaginary playland,
Yes.
which is such a rich part of childhood, and we're robbing them of the ability to feel those feelings and start to learn how to get comfortable processing
That's
them and
exactly
self-soothe
what I
and
was about to
identify them.
say.
And yeah, because then they
Yeah.
end up as teenagers who also need to go to TikTok or YouTube or whatever to mask. Like we're helping, or by allowing them to be bored, by forcing them to be bored and not have that kind of intervention of a screen anytime they feel uncomfortable. It's building that kind of emotional intelligence and resilience, I think.
Yeah, and that capacity to be uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like
Yeah.
I think we have a whole lot of adults who lack that capacity to be uncomfortable, and that leads to a lot of challenges. But one of the things that I have said to some of my family members who are in the teenage age
Right.
is that, you know, when we don't create space for you to be bored, or we don't allow you to be bored, like you could be an artist that never picks up a pen,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
You could be a writer that never writes. You could be,
Yeah.
there's so much that you could create that you will never know that you would
Yeah.
create, because you just always had something to distract you. You always had something to fill your time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, I find that in my own life. I see the pattern in my own life. When I'm really busy and stressed, I'll spend more time on like something like Instagram to kind of self-soothe, or take my mind off whatever it is. But then what it ends up doing is leaving me feeling more depleted, and just without the space or the time to be creative or do the things that actually bring me joy, my hobbies and stuff. I'm like, I don't have time to play my guitar, except I spent an hour and a half yesterday on Instagram, so
Exactly.
probably I did have time to pick up my guitar. So like it's a perfect
Exactly.
example in my own life, and I'm a adult who grew up without it. And so like part of me is like, I should have a little, there I go, shooting myself, a little more ability to self-regulate that. But it's they're, as you said, they're designed to
Yeah.
play on our neuro like wiring to grab us, to get that dopamine hit, to make you come back for more. It's addictive.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what I think. Like I see my partner and I, because like I'm fallible too, right? Like I'll have those moments where I'm like, "Oh my God, it's 1 a.m." and how am I just like scrolling my phone, like go to sleep, or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, right? Or you catch yourself in those moments where you're like, so much time has passed and now I didn't do the thing that I wanted to do, or now I'm just like angry at myself for
Yes.
because I've spent so much time on this thing and didn't really get anything out of it. So what the heck am I doing here? And then I see it in my friendships, my partnerships, my family relationships where, you go to talk to someone and they don't even put their device down, right?
Yeah.
They don't even look at
Yeah.
you.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, "Hi, are you listening? Are you home?" Like you don't get any of that like body language and social cues to be able to read how somebody is like interpreting what you're saying, or if they're even hearing what you're saying, because they're still like facing their phone and maybe they're taking it in, but there's no like body language response. They're so disconnected from their body at that time that you just you're kind of like winging
Yeah.
it.
You're like,
I've
what's
had
going on?
times, yeah, I've had times where I've had to come back to family members and go, "Hey, I'm is everything okay?" And they're like, "Yeah, why?" And I'm, "Oh, when
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned this thing to you earlier, like you didn't look up from your phone, and I don't know if that means that there was more to your response, that, was there a passive aggressiveness there? Was there a
Yeah.
disconnect there? Did you hear me?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, no, all good." Right? It's like right over their head. And
Yeah.
so we didn't even grow up with that.
Yeah.
And so now you take these generations of kids who are growing up with that the whole
Mm-hmm.
time, right? They can't, and I'm guilty of this too, because everything is on my phone. My work's all on my phone. My
Mm-hmm.
doctor's appointments are all on my phone. Everything's on my phone. So I might be doing something like validly important, right? Like I'm not scrolling Instagram, I'm not scrolling TikTok, whatever, but I'm emailing my doctor, or I'm,
Mm-hmm.
something like that that actually requires my brain space. And my kid will come up and ask me a question. Well, she doesn't know if I'm on there doing my taxes or if I'm on there scrolling TikTok. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So if I'm saying to her every time she comes up to me and I have my phone in my hand, like, "Oh, give me a minute," how does she even gauge like what's important, what's not? Does mom even care?
Mm-hmm.
Is she paying attention to me? Or
Yeah.
is her social media more important than what it is that I'm trying to show her right now? Right? Because
Mm-hmm.
she doesn't know what's on the other end of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Even, I mean, even adults, I'm just thinking about, often I also use my phone for work. I have WhatsApp with my clients and Instagram is my primary marketing space. And so I'm on there often to do work, and I'm also guilty of falling into just scrolling. And yeah, I think my partner often gets annoyed because he's like, "You're still on your phone." And I'm like, actually today was a big day and I had to send personal voice notes and like do all this stuff. But there's no way for him to tell the difference.
Exactly. Because it comes with you in your pocket. So it's not like
Mm-hmm.
you're closed off in your office to finish up
Mm-hmm.
your workday. You're in the living room booking clients. You're like at the dinner
Yeah.
table responding to people. Do you know what I mean? How whatever your
Yeah.
boundaries are around phones, it's you're in the car, you're, in the passenger seat, and you're doing something important with a client. And so
Mm-hmm.
nobody else can really know what it is that you're doing on there and whether it really matters as much as it seems to you in
Mm-hmm.
that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And
I
I
think
think,
it causes this massive disconnect.
yeah, yeah. And I think there's something that you just touched on that I'm like, oh, I want to follow that thread of like, there is also this urgency around those activities that didn't used to exist.
I know.
And that because we're so habituated to picking it up, like I will purposefully leave my phone on the other side of the room sometimes if I'm reading or something. And I will catch myself frequently having to like stop what I'm doing and look, and I look for my phone to pick it up. And I'm like I'm enjoying this book unless it's a really good like romantasy. And then nothing will distract me from it. But if it's something I'm having to think about a little more, even if I'm really enjoying it, I will find myself reaching for that quick hit of dopamine is what it really is. And it's,
I think
it's kind of scary.
I think we all find ourselves doing that, right? Like,
yeah,
let's be honest, that's not a you thing.
No, I
think
definitely
that's an everyone thing. And no, I agree. It's pretty bad. And it does really shift the level of boredom and creativity that people can have. And in other ways, it opens up a lot of space and opportunity for creativity in the sense that, you know, these different platforms offer different platforms for creativity, to share your art, to share your creativity. But it's so different because it's so easy to get stuck in this comparison trap where, you know, like, and I'm guilty of that too. I will see people who say, like, I know personally or in the community, or who I've seen grow their stuff online, and I'll know their timeline for, like, you know, let's say they're in similar work to me. I will know their timeline for kind of like when they took their first course, or when they started this, and when they launched their first stuff. And let's say I know that when I started was like 12 years ago, 13 years ago, right? 10 years, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And I will look at them and, like, their social media is so polished, and they're so polished, and they're such beautiful people, you know, like stereotypically beautiful people, and all of these things. And I look at their posts, and I find myself stuck in this comparison trap of, like, man, they look so good, and like they look like they have it so together, and their posture in that photo is so flawless, and they just look so effortless all the time, and things look like they're so easy for them. And I know that they're not, because some of these people I know in real life, and I know that their life isn't easy. Do you know what I mean?
The struggle behind the picture.
Yeah. But I will be, like, looking at these things going, man, they just look so effortless, and they just know how to hold their body. And, like, that's something that I've just never known how to do. Like, how to hold my body in a photo. Like, that I don't know how. I'm like the most awkward. Like, you're going to have to, like, place me. Like, I just don't know what I'm doing, or what to do with my limbs, or where my body is in space. But then, and I don't wear makeup, and I don't do the whole, like, you know, that whole thing. And I see it in these other people, and I find myself comparing not only their photos, but, like, their work.
Yes.
Oh, their photos are so amazing. Their Instagram's so amazing. They must be doing so well in their work, but how are they doing so well when I have like a decade more of experience than they do, or whatever. And I'll start to compare myself as if this static image I'm seeing
is representative of the
has
whole
any
truth.
basis on, like, what it is that they actually do behind the scenes, what their one-on-one sessions look like, what their guided practices look like, you know. And a lot of these people, like, I will have actually been to their work to try to support them, because they're in my community, and I love to do that. When I see, that's something that I've always tried to do, if I see somebody coming up in the same industry as me in my community, if I can, I go out of my way to, like, go to one of their events, or to support them online, or to share their stuff, or to, you know, whatever it is. Right.
Yeah.
And then I'll later find myself in this, like, comparison trap of, like, and it's such bullshit, because I'm like, no, I've been to their stuff, and I know how my work is, and, like, yeah, they're great, but there's no need to, like, get caught in this comparison over this, like, static image where they look so good and so flawless.
Yeah.
Right?
It's so interesting how our brains work. I have a coach who's like, comparison is the thief of joy. I'm like, I know. And it's tough. And it's interesting, the different things that flag for us. When I see the women who are too polished and poised and perfect, I just get annoyed. Like, that's not life. And then I just get annoyed. And then I do the whole story about, like, I don't want to show up that way. It's not authentic to me. That's not how I feel or am. And then I get into the, like, I hate the society rewards this fake bullshit. I just, like, I go on these spirals of, like, and yes, sometimes society does. And also there are people doing it other ways. And it's just that I've started muting people in a big way on Instagram. Like I don't unfollow them. I still like them.
Yeah.
Some of them are friends, and I've just had to say, you know what, I can't see your stuff. Because
I
either I compare
know.
myself to you, or I feel like you have said what I wanted to say, but you said it better. So what's the point in me saying it?
Yeah, you know what's interesting is that sometimes I see that where I have said something and then somebody else says it in
Mm-hmm.
maybe in their own way, but the same thing, or maybe using a lot of the same language as me. And
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting that I don't get so caught up in that because I will see that and go, well, actually, that's a really common phrase.
Right.
Like, let's put some perspective on that. Like, they probably didn't see what I wrote and then go,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm going to write that too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we are in collective energy. A lot of us are in like very similar work, very similar,
Yeah.
ways of thinking and ways of being and like inner processes. And I think we're drawn to people who are all kind of in that same process at the
Yes.
same time a lot of the time. And so that is one thing where I have been able to get some perspective. Like if I see somebody who says something quite similar to me, where I really struggle though is what you just said. If I see somebody else who has said something that I was about to say, now
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I can't say it, even if my
Yeah.
post was already made. You know what I mean? Like I've already
Right.
like written it. Most of my stuff's pre done. I'm not doing it in the moment and posting.
Yeah.
And then I'll see it and I'll go, oh, if I post that now, it's going to look like I just copied that person or they just
Right.
said it better or whatever it is. So it is
Yeah.
really interesting that while these devices create a lot of opportunity and like new space for creativity and new ways of creativity because now you have programs online and things like that that can offer this new creativity. um we also get stuck in this comparison trap. And so then how do you know what what really is creative to you, and where are you just like picking up on what you've seen and kind of like going with the algorithm, let's
Yeah.
say, right?
Well, I think that comes back to boredom and scheduled
Mhm.
downtime. And not to say that we're always going to be informed by the people that we're reading or seeing, right? My dad had a book when he plays music and he writes, and he had this book that he loved. He passed to me that I also was like, this is really cool. I haven't read in ages, but it's called Steal Like an Artist. And the idea is that unless you have like a divine download, which happened for sure, likely your thoughts and ideas and works of art, whether they be words or paintings or, just any creative act, creating a course, they're going to be informed by the people that you've read, the books, the images, the movies, the culture that you're in, and that's okay. But what I think is important is giving yourself enough blank space to drop in and allow yourself to like synthesize and tap into your own unique perspective and magical way of perceiving, to let yourself create from all of the input and create your own unique output. It's going to sound similar to other things, but it's still yours.
You know what else I read the other day? I can't remember who I read it from, and it was something on social media, but it it landed for me. It was around this idea that if you get a creative spark, like you mentioned a download, right? So if you get
Mm-hmm.
this divine download of this creative spark, which for me happens that's where a lot of my work comes from, is just like this spark that lands and I go with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um always in my downtime, always in like some downtime, some
Yeah.
time of quiet. If I haven't given myself enough of that space to be bored or enough of that downtime, then it will come in the middle of the night when I like can't write it down, right? Because that's the only
Right.
space that your head has space to have things land.
Yeah.
But what I was reading was this idea that if you receive this divine download and you don't act on it, it will
Someone
go to
else will.
someone else,
Yeah, Liz
right?
Gilbert writes about that in Big Magic.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I loved that because I thought, yeah, these are not even the divine downloads that we get, like they are not ours. They are collective
Mm-hmm.
energy that we just have like the
We get to be the channel.
privilege
Yeah.
to pick up on, right? And yeah, they're not ours if we don't do anything with them like somebody else will, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you want to share about embracing unproductive time in the quiet? Because I know that weaves right into this. When we embrace unproductive time, we allow ourselves to be bored. When we embrace the quiet, we allow that boredom, the creative sparks land. But I don't know very many people in this society, except for kind of in the realm of practitioners that I know who are like skilled at this, who are really comfortable with the quiet and with sitting with themselves in that way and embracing, and not only embracing, but like scheduling unproductive time. So, because let's face it, in this society, like if you're not scheduling it, it's not
probably
happening.
not going to happen. Yeah.
Right. So even for your unproductive time, like I find that has to be scheduled. And for me, like I will look ahead in my calendar a couple of weeks and go, okay, how much do I have on the calendar and how much room does that leave me for unproductive, unscheduled time? And if it's getting pretty full, or if we're teetering on the edge of like, if one thing goes wrong or a few things like pop up unexpectedly, I'm not going to have room for that. That's where my calendar stops. Nothing else is getting scheduled in that time. Right? Because I need to, I'm a mom. I have to leave room for unexpected things to arise. And we have a support team for one of my family members that I have to manage and things like that. So all the time I'm suddenly spending 8 hours doing scheduling for 8 different people, or I'm doing, do you know what I mean? Things like that I'm not expecting to have to do. So I look ahead 2 weeks. If there's not a whole lot of room for unexpected things to come up, my schedule is stopped there. Doesn't matter if it's social, doesn't matter if it's like whatever, nothing else is getting added to that unless it's like urgent, unexpected, and has to be done, or like a medical appointment, something like that. And then that leaves this space for me to be able to like move through life in a different way and have that room for unproductive time and for flow and for rest and for creativity. But I don't think very many people do that. And I think that most of us live with a really overscheduled schedule. And I say that as someone who lived that way for a lot of my life and learned the hard way through becoming very, very ill, that that was not a way of being that was supportive to me. But most people, myself back then as well, were so uncomfortable with unscheduled, unproductive time that there had to be some kind of a distraction. Like my self-worth was entirely wrapped into how much I did.
Yes.
How productive I was. Right? And it made me so, so ill. But that was all I knew. And it was a survival mechanism because I couldn't be alone with myself. I could not sit with myself in that way for a second. And I think that a lot of people are there. So share more. What do you want to say about that?
I feel like you touched on so many of the things that I also would love to touch on. And right at the end there, that self-worth piece, especially if you are in a body or you identify as like a femme or a woman or queer, we tend to have even more of our self-worth wrapped up in that being of service and giving of ourselves all the time. And the productivity piece. I think men and women probably get equally on the productivity piece because that's capitalism, right? Be productive, bigger, better, faster, onwards, upwards, more, makes it so that it's really hard to have that downtime. But then you add on to it that kind of worthiness. You're more worthy of love and admiration and respect if not only are you being productive, but you're also tending to everybody else's needs, and you're the one who drops everything to go help a friend. And not that that's not a great thing to do sometimes, but within reason and capacity. And it becomes this issue when we're doing it all of the time. And the story runs so deep and so long in most of our bodies and our lives that it's sometimes really hard to even see it. I was going to say I'm actually not the best at scheduling that unproductive time in, and I'm really guilty of when I do and something comes up, I'm like, oh look, well I have this chunk of time that's open for this thing now. And it's defining those places to prioritize. Yeah, sure. Sometimes it's important to go see a friend I haven't seen in half a year in that chunk of time that I was leaving for myself to just rest and be, but only if I've got some other chunk of time to rest and be, because otherwise, as we jumped on today, I was like, I'm pretty tired right now because I've been going and pushing myself a bit too hard. And
yeah,
and when it perpetuates like that, we hit that wall of burnout over and over. And I feel like that's my lesson in this life, is navigating it, practicing another way, slipping and falling, and coming back to it, and then helping guide others.
Yeah. Oh, that's all like landing. So I was like getting dizzy while you're talking, because I'm like, this is just all so true, and so true for me, and landing so deeply, like I feel like not just for me, but for the collective of like where society is at right now, and like where we are living today, is such a massive epidemic. And for someone like myself, like I don't know your whole health history, but for someone like myself, when I have landed into burnout over and over and over again, like you're saying, like I got to a point where I was so bedridden I couldn't eat or speak. Like I couldn't verbalize anything. I had to have, my husband had to stay home from work and like take me from bed to the bathroom and bring food to me and spoon feed me, because I was so unwell. And, we can call that burnout. We can call it chronic fatigue syndrome, myalgic encephalomyelitis, like mast cell activation syndrome, POTS, like all of those things, like Lyme disease, all of those things fall within that kind of category. But we know within those illnesses, and especially through working through the internal medicine clinic that I've been offering these groups and stuff to, we know that that's the pattern for most of these people.
Yeah.
Right? There's either an injury, a virus, or this like pattern of life. And typically there's two of those things, right? So there's going to be that pattern of life and a virus or an injury.
Yeah.
And so recovery becomes very challenging, because first of all, you're suddenly forced to sit with yourself in an entirely new way. Like I couldn't have a screen running because I literally couldn't handle like the vestibular sensations, like the visual input, the sound input, any of those things. So I had to literally just lie in my bed in the dark for like months, right?
Yeah.
And you really are forced to be with yourself in an entirely new way. And when you do get some of your health back, you have to learn an entirely new way of being so that you don't end up back there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's such an interesting, like the way that the body responds to this pattern and this pushing past any kind of limit that we should be pushing past. And I think I have been so far very lucky in not having any major health outcomes. I ended up heartache is one that comes up. I get heartburn, and in my marriage I ended up medicated for heartburn.
That's right. You shared that in our last episode. That was such a good share.
And I found it popping up again recently, and I was sharing to some healers that I trained with. We went for brunch last week, and I was saying, I don't think it has to do with my relationship now, because nothing about this relationship feels at all like that. And my one healer friend, who's just so intuitive, she's like, oh, I'm getting something. Can I share with you? Like, yes. And she said, I think it's your relationship with yourself. And
I just got like full body chills. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that like, would you ever treat a dear loved one and push them to the same extent and like expect of them what you expect of yourself? No. No, I tell my friends and my clients and my family and my partner, I tell them to like take a break and take care of themselves all the time. And I genuinely mean it because they're all doing a lot. And then I hold myself, and I know that I'm not alone in this. I hold myself to this standard of, well, that's all fine and dandy for them, but I need to get this stuff done, or whatever it might be. I'm not doing enough or working hard enough, or there's still that voice that says, I'm not worthy of rest, even though what I teach
Yeah.
and help my clients with is resting and coming home to that basic human right that we all have, that so many of us feel we aren't entitled to.
I just want to sit with that. I just want all of our listeners, I just want the whole world to sit with that, to really let that sink in and to reflect on what that means for them, because I think that that is so, like, at least across North America, that is, you know, such a collective feeling. And I think that we also get stuck in this idea of, like, we have a really misinterpreted perspective on what actually needs to be done, and this like false sense of urgency of like what needs to be done when. And there's a lot that can just be left for tomorrow, right? That we don't really process in the moment. And so I think that that really feeds into this, because, you were saying you get this voice in your head that's saying, that you're not worthy of rest, or that there's still so much to be done, or that if you don't do this thing, then you're not being productive enough, that you're not worthy. But I think that our society has this like significant sense of urgency around things that don't really require that sense of urgency if you were to actually like flesh it out. And I think that feeds into that a lot, because I don't know that people even get past that thought to get to where you just were, right? Because they get stuck in this mind trap, this story that they tell themselves of, this has to be done right now. This has to be done today, right? And because we're all living in fast forward, it never feels like there's enough time. So if this doesn't get done today, then it won't ever get done, or when will it get done? And we get stuck in this idea that everything is so urgent.
Yeah. And because of hyper independence being like this way of being that has been put on a pedestal by, again, like North America, specifically the US and Canada, we have this sense of, oh, and it has to get done by me.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't have to ask for help, because being strong and independent is what makes me worthy. Again, like that validation. And I'm not taking up space, and I'm not being a burden, and all of those things.
And I don't know about you, but I have experienced at times in my life when I have developed the courage to say, hey, I need somebody else to take this on. I need somebody else to help me with this thing. That a lot of the people in my life have that same idea of like hyper independence, right? Because we're all kind of programmed the same way. And so then for me to come and say, hey, can I delegate this to you? Because I actually I'm so stretched right now that I really need some help. I have definitely been met with this idea of like, no, that's not my problem.
Oh,
that's yours.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think we see that massively in like the parenting communities right now, because there's this like weird dynamic where a lot of our generation grew up with our grandparents heavily involved. And then a lot of our generation who's having kids now, like the generation above us who is the grandparents, they're living very differently than our grandparents did when we were kids. And so the dynamic is very different. So there's this idea that like, you had the kid, it's not my problem. Like we're going to do the things that we want to do when we want to do them. But as far as like, and I'm not just speaking to like my own this isn't about me and my family. This is just a narrative that I'm seeing come up a lot in the parenting community and in some of the people who I work with and support, where they do finally get that courage to say, hey, I need help, right? I'm burning out. I need somebody else to step in and be my village here. And they're being met with, that's too bad. Right?
Yeah. And I feel like some of that is probably because those people who they're reaching out to are also like, I'm barely holding my own head above water.
Exactly.
There's this like kind of cycle we're in where we're all in these hyper individual bubbles and none of us feel like we have capacity. And I don't know what the solution is aside from all that comes back over and over and over is like community, community, community. Somehow, you know, I think about if there's a little village and there's 10 houses and everybody has one kid and one day of the week it's one of the family's responsibility to feed and deal with the kids and then everybody else gets that day off, then you suddenly have capacity. But when you're kind of swimming with just trying to keep your head above water and somebody says, hey, can you take my kid for the day, for instance? And you're like, I can barely manage my own kid. I can't have your kid too.
Exactly.
That sense of, interconnection, reciprocity, community. And then it feels so lonely and isolating.
I know. And I do think that on top of people having this, like, just their capacity is so stretched, they can't take on another thing. So when they, you know, like you just said, there's also this concept where if somebody else has been programmed with that same way of thinking, that same hyper independence, then they're much less likely to accept the fact that you need help because they can't accept that for themselves. Right? Yeah. We can only go with somebody else to the depths that we've gone with ourselves. And so when you approach somebody and you ask for that help, but their programming for themselves is, I can't ask for that help because I made this mess, this is my problem, or I had this kid, this is my problem, or this is my responsibility to bear, then they're faced with this other person coming to them with this other perspective and asking for that support. That really triggers their wound.
Yes. And it's like, how dare they?
Their hyper-independence wound. So then they can't even fathom that for another person because they have not yet fathomed that for themselves. Right?
And then it feels almost like an imposition. And then it does feel like the other person is putting something. And often, I can't speak for everyone, but I know a lot of women that I've spoken to, it comes also with a sense of guilt.
Yeah.
When they say no.
Yeah.
And that like.
Yeah.
Desire
and this
to
really,
please.
We have this like really fucked up version of boundaries, I think, in our society too, where we don't really understand where I end and you begin. And we don't understand that boundaries have less to do with like controlling what another person does and more to do with what will we do and not do in different situations. And so then we feel like we have to say yes to everything because we haven't dealt with our own shit. Now we resent that person for even asking.
Yeah.
But we should have honored ourselves in the first place. And it's not really that person's problem for asking, right? That person has the right to ask. We have the right to say no.
Yeah.
If we don't say no and we don't honor our own boundaries in that situation, that's not on that other person. And yet we just have this like really weird, like for such a hyper independent society, we have this really strange enmeshment.
Yes. Yeah.
And lack of boundaries.
and again, to the like, I hate generalizing, and I know that the lived experience of people who are walking in this world as women versus men, I think that women typically, again, in that we've been cast into that caregiving role to some extent, it is probably biological. We bear the children, but there's also like that, the role that we've been told to play is again, that mother martyr, you do everything for everyone else. Like the mark of a good woman is that she is self-sacrificing and puts everyone's needs above her own. And so then of course we feel guilty and resentful. And then we feel guilty for feeling resentful. Like the cycle is so deep, and it all comes back to that. to be worthy, I need to do these things that I've been told make me worthy.
And then nobody feels comfortable going to you and asking for anything because they know that you martyr yourself. So they know that you feel like they're putting you out.
Yes,
And
there are people that I know that I like, if I need to ask them for something, I will like, first I caveat, like absolutely 100% no pressure. The number of times I've started a sentence with that. And then the like follow up, like, are you sure? Does this feel okay? I really want to make sure this doesn't feel onerous to you. Please don't hesitate to say no. And that's that awareness in me of, and I don't do that with everyone because I do have folks in my life who I know will just say no if they can't. And it's so nice to know that there's those people.
I know.
You're
it's
like, oh,
so freeing.
It's so freeing because then I don't have those to do this pussyfooting thing around and like, are you gonna say yes but don't really mean yes? I don't actually want you to say yes, but they don't have the awareness or capacity to say no without feeling guilty. And so it's just a very interesting.
The amount of emotional labor that goes in from the person on the other side of the martyr is unbelievable. Unbelievable. And the martyr themselves, that whole role is about like being what other people want them to be and not putting other people out and like putting themselves out instead of the other person. But that martyr character doesn't even recognize the significant emotional labor that archetype is causing the other person in that party.
Yeah. If the other person is self-aware.
Yeah. And well, yeah, I guess so. And so that martyr archetype, like they don't even get that piece of it. And they just think like they're doing everybody a favor.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm at a point in my life where like I have a few people who are significantly that part of them is significantly present, right? I think we all have that part in us, right? Yeah. That martyr part, right?
For sure.
But I have a few people in my life who that martyr part is at the forefront of a lot of their lives. And I just can't do it anymore. I can't go to them for support. I can't go to them for conversations or to ask for help because that part of them is so strong and so present that to do the emotional labor, to like dance around it, and then to deal with the emotional fallout afterwards, because they end up saying yes, but they still go through their own process of everything that goes on inside of the martyr after they've said yes to something.
Yeah.
And then there's this whole emotional fallout afterwards because I am aware of all of these pieces. And it's unbelievably exhausting. Unbelievably exhausting. And it has significantly changed how I navigate these relationships and how close I am able to keep these people to me. Basically, I'm not able to keep these people close to me because it's too much. I love them and it will be there. Like they will be, they're there and I'm there and I'm not going anywhere. But as far as who I keep in like my close circle of who I'm going to go to right away, who I'm going to talk to all the time, who I'm going to share things with, who I'm going to really let into my life, they can't be there.
Yeah.
They can't be in that place.
Yeah.
And I think that's really sad because the whole concept, I mean, I've been a martyr, you know what I mean? Like I know what goes through their head. I've been that person. And the whole thing there is that like, they just want to do good by all of these people. And they have such good intentions and they want to do right by all of these people, but they can't uphold their own boundaries or connect with their own sense of self within that. And so I think that's really sad that it gets to that point where now you can't even have this person in your life because that person can't navigate that part of them.
Yeah. I think it's really hard too for people who are just starting to like recognize this pattern or this awareness in themselves, in others, when people start to become aware of where they're maybe needing some boundaries or working on that space, and then they come up against people who have never had that in their lives, and it can feel very isolating or lonely when you're like, oh, I need to do this work for me, it's really important, but then all the people that I have counted on my whole life, I no longer can in the same way, or I can't connect in the same way. And that's, I think, a lot of what, when people talk about, the spiritual or other growth and how you lose people along the way, I think it's often that it's not that you suddenly don't like them or care about them or vice versa. It's that you suddenly recognize the harm some of those behavior patterns are causing for you. And if they're not ready to recognize and also grow with you, then you just can't keep them that close if you're going to grow and tend to yourself and honor your own needs.
To follow that, something I think is really important, and some of our listeners are going to be people who are just stepping onto this path, and so I really want to highlight this for them, because I think what you just identified is really prominent in that journey of growth, no matter what that growth, like you said, maybe spiritual, maybe other. So no matter what that growth is for them, I think that's really, really important. And another piece of that is that if you were to flip that, as that person is growing and is recognizing, I really need to work on these things for me, and this is really causing some challenges in my life, and I need to make some shifts. It's not only that they start to recognize the harm that other people's just like natural way of being, or I don't even want to say natural way of being, their programmed way of being,
right?
The harm that their programmed way of being is doing in their relationship. But as that person who is growing starts to connect with those like deeper parts of themselves, it acts as a mirror to those people who have not connected to themselves in that way. And all of a sudden, their mere presence is so triggering to these people who haven't connected with their own shadow in that way, or haven't connected with their own parts in that way. So now you have this situation where the person who's growing is starting to recognize, oh, that person's like programmed way of being is actually doing harm within this relationship, and it's really tricky for me to be around right now. But you also have the other person in that situation going, oh, you've changed, or what's coming up in you is really triggering the things that I've refused to look at in me.
Yeah.
But they can rarely recognize that because they haven't been there, they haven't been through it. So instead of seeing it as that person's growing and their shifts are triggering something in me, I think they tend to go, you're changing and I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like who you're becoming.
Yeah, big time. For sure.
Yeah, that's a tricky.
Especially with those boundaries pieces, because then all of a sudden, and you're not as useful to me anymore, can come up too.
Yeah, and rejection sensitivity and all sorts of things when people start to set boundaries that honor them, that the people who were benefiting from that person having no boundaries.
Yes, exactly. Or like,
all
wait
of a
minute.
Have to, they have to face all of these pieces, and they feel rejected, and they feel these different things that really this person placing these boundaries has nothing to do with them. But
it feels
it feels personal, right?
Yeah.
So I want to move on. I love this conversation so much, and I don't want to cut it off. And I'm so eager to talk about the next piece. And I'm mindful of our time here. So this episode's going to come out in January, which is such a perfect time for our listeners to be hearing about like the cyclical nature of our lives and the seasons. And because in North America, a lot of people associate January with the new year. And I know that neither you or I associate January with the new year. And we are a little bit more attuned to those seasons. I also know that my attunement to the seasons is more in like, I celebrate the equinoxes, the solstices, and I do connect with that shifting of the energy ahead of those seasons. Like I can feel that shift start to happen. But I know that for you, you really recognize those equinoxes and solstices as like the midpoints of the season instead of the start. So I know that you and I both have some offerings that are seasonal based, and that this is really in alignment with like not only our work, but just our way of life and our way of being. So I'd love for you to dive a little bit deeper into, what it looks like to attune to our cyclical nature. What does that even mean for the people who are hearing something like that for the first time? And then I'd love to hear your perspective of the seasons, because I know it's not the same as how we celebrate kind of in North America. So your perspective of the seasons and then how those show up within ourselves and within our lives.
Yeah. My favorite topic, which is still just about rest.
Yeah.
And yeah, that idea of like attuning to our cyclical nature. So no matter what kind of body you're in, you're a cyclical being. And if you have, if you're in a male body, but from a biological perspective, there's that kind of 24-hour reset on the hormones. If you're in a female body, again, I know that these are not binaries, but there's that kind of 28-ish day hormonal fluctuation, ebbs and flows like the moon. But then all of us are in this longer cycle of the seasons. They are present. And for those of us closer to the poles, we have those kind of 4 distinct-ish seasons. But even closer to the equator, there's still, there's the rainy and the dry season. There's shifts. Nature is always in motion, and there's always periods of rest in that cycle, in that motion. And so the way that I've often described it, and I actually, full disclosure, got this from a guest on my own podcast who said, our society is kind of in this perpetual spring summer energy, right? Yeah. Spring, planting, new growth, fresh energy. It's like the world is coming alive. There's this excitement. Summer, we're really busy. We're out in the world. It's bright. There's this fiery, doing, passionate energy. And those are both beautiful seasons. But in nature, neither of them can exist if we don't also have autumn, shedding the things that no longer serve us, letting them fall to the earth to become compost for the seeds that we're going to plant. And then that kind of long dark of winter where where nature goes dormant and rests and pauses. And it's like this sacred dream time. And so when I think about weaving kind of all of what we've talked about together, that idea of cultivating space for boredom and stillness and rest, that's what winter is all about. And as you're listening, or people are listening to this episode, if they're listening when it comes out, we're in that season of deep rest. We're actually coming kind of to the end and moving towards spring in the way that I view the seasons, which I'll touch on soon. But there is that sense of it's okay to slow down. It's okay to take more hours of like literal sleep. It's okay to not leave your house for days on end sometimes. It's okay to be still and to be fallow, right? Like those fallow fields, it's important. It's not even okay. It's actually necessary. Because just like a field that gets planted and harvested and planted and harvested and planted and harvested and never gets to go fallow and regenerate, we have to start pouring chemical fertilizers onto those fields for them to keep producing food. Our bodies are no different. And so we pour on coffee and other stimulants and ways to keep ourselves awake and moving forward. But we kind of exist in this place of just perpetual depletion if we don't let ourselves rest and go inward. So that's like that powerful teaching of the seasons for me. And it's why the first thing I started doing was holding ceremony around those wheel of the year. It's what I call it, or I didn't make that up. Obviously, the wheel of the year is an ancient agricultural way of telling time. It wasn't a calendar the way we understand calendars today, but it was those equinoxes, those solstices, and then the midway points in between. And The midway points in between, in the Celtic version of the Wheel of the Year, which is the one that I've been learning the most about and leaning into because of my own history and heritage, the seasons themselves start at those midway points. They're called cross-quarter celebrations or fire festivals. And so February 1st is the beginning of spring. And the spring equinox is the middle of spring. And then we get into summer, which begins on May 1st with Beltane and peaks with the summer solstice, which is also called midsummer in a lot of the world for a reason, because it's the middle of summer. And then we get into, autumn and noticing that, as you said, you start to notice the shift before the day that we say this is the beginning of the season. And to me, as soon as I clicked, like I was August 1st and I was like, this is the middle of summer. It feels that way because that's how our school year is set up. But the first year I was paying attention, I went outside to put my feet in the grass that morning, August 1st, and I saw the first leaf on the ground. And the days are getting shorter. It's still warm, but they're cool in the evenings. And that we have, like right now, half the leaves where I am are already yellow. Like we are full on fall, and it's not quite the equinox. And so that gave me, I don't know, it just gave me a rooting into the seasons and letting the energies of the seasons make me feel more comfortable with rest, with downtime, with boredom. When I feel really anxious or antsy or like I should be doing more, if I can connect to that cyclical part of me that's attuned and actually get out in nature to feel into it, it really helps me surrender to that, again, that basic human right and necessity that is like slowing down and taking time to rest.
I love that. I really noticed that this year, and it's not my first year noticing it, but what shifted for me this year was that you and I have had this conversation, right? And so in the past, I've always noticed it. I've always felt that kind of attunement to, oh, things are shifting and we're not at the equinox yet, or we're not at the solstice yet. And I'm really noticing the shifts, but I didn't have, so much of like the language for it. I just picked up on it as, oh, I'm just like attuning to the energy, and we don't really get there until the equinox is there, sort of thing. Right. Like, so just because I'm attuning to it now doesn't mean that it is already shifting. Right.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't happen overnight. But I didn't have that structure that you had presented me with in one of our last conversations. And so I had this different intellectual piece to link to that attunement this year. And that was really interesting for me, because definitely when August hit, I knew like this shift is not just something I'm feeling. Right? This is a shift in the seasons. And it makes so much sense when you start to look at it that way, because the days are getting shorter, right? Summer solstice is the longest day of the year.
Yeah.
And now you're going into shorter days.
By August.
But school system programs you to think of summer as July and August, when the days are actually starting to get shorter. And so that was really interesting to me this year to reflect on and to have that intellectual piece to weave into that inner knowing and that inner sense. And when September hit too, I was like ready, like for fall walks and for, and this past summer was the first time in a few years that I was able to go out like without a wheelchair and like do some of these things that I really enjoyed doing in the past, like back on a paddleboard and back to doing some of these pieces. And then one of the things that I've always really loved is fall walks in the forest. And that's just something that has always brought me, a lot of peace, and my body really like aches for it. My soul aches for it. And so as soon as September hit, I was like, I'm there, I'm ready. Like, we're going for a forest walk, like, and I think September hadn't even hit yet. And I was already kind of starting that at the end of August, and just really feeling into that sense of fall. And then I found this interesting conflict, like inner conflict in me of, man, I really want to hold on to summer and I don't want to jump ahead. I don't want to be living in fast
Mm,
forward through this, because for us living with the school system and things like that is kind of, our time off work or our time off
hmm.
school, however you want to call it. And I was like, I don't want to give up the beach yet, and I don't want to give up paddleboarding yet, and I really want to like hold on to this and like let it be what it is and stretch it out, and I don't want to jump so far into fall yet. And I also had this sense of like really being ready to step into fall and to do these fall forest walks and all of that. And really, like, what I was asking myself for was to be in the now, to be with what is here
Ah,
right now, to
yeah,
not jump ahead to feeling like it's October and, pumpkin
right.
picking.
Yeah,
And to we weren't out of the season where you can still go paddleboarding, you can still go to the beach. And that's where I think there's this like mental shift of you can still do these things in the fall, right? Like
yeah,
our fall is quite reasonable here on the coast. And so
yeah.
you can go paddleboarding into the beach and whatever, like through September, a lot of
Hmm.
years at
Hmm.
least.
Yeah, they're not
And
mutually exclusive, like fall and paddleboarding can
yes.
coexist.
And so I think I really just had to land where I was and accept that this, what I've been taught all my life
Hmm.
about the seasons and what it means to be in fall and what it means to be in summer and the activities that you do in those different seasons don't have to be the way that I have always been taught that it was, because it's not.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm allowed to just be with what is exactly here. And that was interesting for me because I've always been like a late fall hiker, like
Hmm.
even like before needing a wheelchair and before like being quite ill. I would, on my birthday, which is in November 15th is my
Mm.
birthday. Okay. So
Hmm.
you're like you're like winter by then,
Yeah.
by your scale of things. And we would go on these like little hikes in the pouring rain with like our
Mm.
baby strapped to our chest and like rain jackets around all of us. Um and I loved that. And so for me, it was a really interesting reflection for me this year to see that kind of programming showing up, but recognizing that it's not even really how I live my life. And yet here I
Hmm.
was trying to put myself into this like binary
Right. Yeah.
and feeling
That
like I
makes
had to
sense.
hold on to something or not jump ahead. And really, if I could just land
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. There was this sense as you were talking initially about like, but can't it still be this vacation time where we're present and enjoying all the activities we want, even if the season isn't quote unquote summer? It doesn't matter what season it is if we're being present and doing the activities that feel good to do in those times. There's also this like real sense of, autumn and spring being liminal seasons, those seasons of transition. And actually, when I talk about the four seasons in terms of the Celtic wheel of the year, if I'm being really true to the ancient Celts, they talked about the light half and the dark half of the year. And the dark half of the year started on October 31st at dusk. And the light half started, what's going to be the other side of that? February in bulk,
Yeah.
which is, yeah, February 1st or technically January 31st at dusk. And so then that there was that like transitional period at the end and the beginning of the two kind of seasons, if you will. And it just makes a lot more sense in my brain to talk about the four seasons because where I live, that's very much how it's
Yeah.
experienced, and it's so much a part of me. But um, it's all just constructs,
Yeah.
and just
Absolutely.
like just like this idea of January 1st, I'm bringing us full circle. This idea of January 1st as like this beginning is this arbitrary date in a lot of ways that was the Gregorian calendar. I don't remember off the top of my head when it came into existence, but it's relatively recent. And from all the energetic perspectives, it doesn't make any sense as a new beginning the way that we talk about it with like this get up and go, seize the day,
Yeah.
that kind of energy. And yet it's culturally significant. And so I think I always think about how I do honor it as a beginning of sorts, because that's like, it's so prevalent in our culture. Everybody's in that energy of trying to celebrate this moment, that I think there's it's important to at least acknowledge that, and also just give yourself some space and grace, and don't try to make 80 resolutions on
That's what I was just
January
gonna say.
1st.
Yeah, I was just gonna speak to that because I think this whole like January 1st resolutions thing energetically goes so against the energetics of the year, and
Yeah.
it really sets us up for failure. And I think that like if you want to really expand on that, like, which we won't because there's just not enough time for an expansion like what I'm gonna say, but if you look at January 1st and the intention setting and the new beginning from like a capitalistic, like patriarchal society perspective, that going completely against the energetics of the year and the energetics of our body totally sets us up for failure, which is
exactly how they want us.
Exactly. That's exactly where I was going with that. And it really keeps us in this like cycle of kind of like knocking us down and disempowerment. Whereas if you can really attune to your own cyclical nature and like your inner seasons, then you can utilize your energy in a very different way that can bring you like this very different success and a different perspective of what success is, and these shifts that I think keep us quite healthy, which I think that the society that we're living in keeps us quite sick. And so I do find that very interesting, and I can relate to you in the sense of like wanting to recognize January 1st and wanting to celebrate it in a different way, like because that's what is cultural and that's what everybody around us is doing. But I've definitely changed how I do that.
Yeah,
So
I feel like I like the party, and then I'm like, and then the next day I'm like, and it's another day, and I get to sleep and not. I think that was a big shift for me, was like, first we're all supposed to celebrate till way past our bedtimes, and then the next day we're supposed to suddenly put into like all these healthy habits into place when half the world is hungover or sleep deprived or both.
exactly.
It's so backwards.
I do like to, the last few years, what I've done is like sat with my family and kind of taken inventory of like our own inner worlds and like, how did we feel last year and what did that look like for us? And how do we want to feel this next year? And what does that look like for us? And so it's much less around like, I'm going back to the gym 7 days a week and, I'm eating clean and I'm changing all of these things, and much more about reflecting on who we've been and who we want to be and what that might look like in the future. And that is a much more like introspective, potentially like journal based practice versus like the champagne and fireworks at midnight and that sort of thing, which I think for me has really aligned more with winter and with the energetics of the year at that time, right? Yeah. So what do the different seasons represent to you, and kind of like what does that mean, your inner seasons, right? For the people who are hearing like attuning to this inwards and that in a different way for the first time. What does that mean to you?
Yeah. So the first thing I want to say is that your inner season doesn't have to match the outer season of the world. Often, to some extent, our energy levels will ebb and flow in a larger scale with those external seasons, but we still have internal seasons that might look like our menstrual cycle if we're in menstruating bodies, or a lunar cycle, or just completely not related at all to any of that stuff. And the easiest one to kind of start with, which is perfect because in the Celtic calendar or the Celtic way of looking at the world, the day begins with dusk as the night goes down or the sun goes down. and the new season or the new year begins in the dark. At Samhain, that's with winter, is to start with winter. And winter is a grief season. It's also a dreamtime season. It's this connection with kind of ancestral memory and wisdom. If we're thinking about it in terms of elements, it's the earth, and the direction of north. And so obviously you don't have to be sad always to be wintering, but if you have a big grief in your life, it's going to put you into a winter. It just is. And sometimes in the depths of winter, it feels like it's never going to be light again. And that's really normal. That kind of fear of how long do I have to be in this winter? And or it could be a really like a creative space where you hear people talk about dark night of the soul, and that might not be a grief, but that might be a big shift or opening or awakening. Often there's some grief there too, though.
I was going to say, my dark nights of the soul have been pretty dark.
Well, that questioning of existence.
Yeah, they've been pretty heavy. I've had a few, and
they're typically not light.
Yeah.
I just don't want to like paint winter with this negative brush, because for so many of us, the idea of grief or those bigger trials is this negative thing. And for me, the more I lean into those inner seasons and the seasons themselves, I love winter. I get to sleep and I get to be cozy and I get to dream. So that's that kind of energy of that season.
It's interesting to me that you linked the dark night of the soul to winter, because that was not kind of in my that's the first time I've had that presented to me in that way. So the more I lean into the seasons, the more I feel like winter is this period of, deep hibernation and metamorphosis, and like your cocoon phase and your transformation, your inner transformation, and your kind of your hermit phase. You're going inward and you're allowing your inner self to shift and release and become in a completely new way, in a way that can only really be done in private, like in that quiet space, in that introspective and more personalized, slower pace of a space.
Like a womb. It's a womb or a cave. It's generative. We think about it in terms of like the life cycle. It's often associated with death or cronehood, but it's so generative, and that's that life, death, rebirth cycle that is so important in all of creation.
Yeah, I like the link of the dark night to the soul to it, because that statement brings me so much more comfort to my, because I've been through some pretty rough dark nights of the soul and really, really excruciating awakening processes where, some of them, like I genuinely wasn't sure that I would make it out alive. And and I find so much comfort in my inner winter. And so to link those two things together now, that feels like it's brought me just like a lot of peace in that shift of perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. It's even in the name, night, winter, night, dark.
Yeah.
And that again, when we get to paint these big life experiences onto this cyclical way of moving, it's that reminder that it will pass, because spring will always come again. It might not feel like it, but it's coming.
That's one of those things where I really had to go through it a few times to really get to a point of trust and of like that deep inner knowing that spring was going to come, that this is a dark night of the soul, and that as with anything, it will pass, because that is the cycle of it, that it will pass. And that the more you grip and grasp and resist it, the longer
The
it
longer it's gonna
stays,
last.
the longer it holds on, and the more you allow and like soften into it
And be present to it.
and be
Almost
present to it.
like the sense
Yes.
too of, I experience this every year seasonally because where I live, it's winter forever. And so February 1st, if I think about it as the beginning of spring, and there's so often it's very, very wintry here still. There's 2 feet of snow. I'm like, this is the only one of the turns of the wheel that doesn't feel like I struggle to find the spring in it. And a lot of that is because I'm done with winter at that point, and all I can focus on is how much I don't want the snow to be there, and how much I'm like, I want it to be warm, and how much I want it to just not be winter anymore. And if I'm focused on that and how much I don't want that thing to be real anymore, what I'm missing is how the light's longer every day, and how there's this subtle like sense of quickening or waking up even under the snow in the trees. The birds start to come back, like there is a shift towards spring. But if I'm so focused on how much I don't want winter anymore, I fail to notice it. And I think it's the same when we're in those places of really difficult personal turmoil or whatever it is we're navigating. If all we focus on is how much we don't want to feel that way anymore, instead of allowing it to be there and be present to it, we miss the little signs that it's shifting, or that we hold it there. We keep that experience alive longer in our bodies.
I know. This is just reminding me of the course I'm in right now. And by the time this episode comes out, I'll have, hopefully have my certification and be done it. But I'm in a somatic inquiry training course right now. And it's what you're saying really aligns with that. And I'm reflecting on my own dark nights of the soul and my own times where I'm resisting certain things and how much they hold on when I'm resisting. And it's almost like you have to invite it deeper in. And and how many times are we like struggling with something, or I've had just miraculous shifts in some of my pain conditions and things like that as well. When I invite that pain deeper, I invite it to be here and to be present, and I hold it differently, and I allow it. And then it's like it tells me what it needs, and then it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah, that resistance. I was writing about that this morning. I was doing a guided writing practice inside my mentorship program once a month. I have a sweet woo sister, as we call ourselves, who leads one of the sessions for us inside the mentorship. And it's always a writing circle. And today she was having us write letters to our future selves from our higher selves.
I love that. I do that a lot in some of my practices. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was I had a really potent healing session yesterday by a woman that I've started to see here, who's a coach and a therapist and a healer. And so I was feeling really open and tuned in. And one of the things that my higher self wrote to my future self today was like, if you find yourself pushing up against that resistance, go stop, go do something else, go rest, go lay down, go put on a song, and like stop beating your head against the thing and resisting it. Let it be there, and that'll give you the freedom to see it, to understand what it's trying to tell you. Because pain and resistance and all of these things, these uncomfortable feelings, they're all trying to tell us something. And if they can get their message through, often they're going to be like, cool, peace.
Exactly. You got it. You don't need me anymore. You don't need me anymore.
Yeah. Bye.
Yes. I had sciatica so severely that I couldn't walk. So I couldn't walk unassisted. So my partner would help me out of bed and like to the bathroom and all of these things. And to get to like a practitioner's office to be treated, he'd have to like half carry me to the car and then like half carry me into the practitioner's office. And then to get up onto their bed was like a whole thing. And It was so severe. And I ended up, because this completely bedridden, like this was another time of being bedridden, and for a couple of weeks with this sciatica. And every day I would do, because at this point I was bedridden, but I wasn't like cognitively bedridden. Do you know what I mean? It
Right.
wasn't
Yeah.
one of those situations where I like couldn't eat and couldn't speak or couldn't think or couldn't watch TV or whatever. Like I was just in
Mm-hmm.
so much pain that I couldn't move.
Yeah.
And so I every day would go inward and do like some energy work and some somatic work and like really invite in this feeling and this pain. And so over the course of a couple of weeks, I did a lot of my own shedding or shifting of the energy layers and of the various layers around it. And then one day I went in and I just really invited it to be there. Like I'm really just allowing this pain to be fully here, and I'm fully present with it, and it's excruciating, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it just left. It just dissolved. And I literally got out of bed and just walked out to the living room to my husband, who was again working from home because I could not move from bed and he
Right.
couldn't leave me.
Yeah.
And I just walked out to where he was working. And he's like, "What?" And I'm like, "I think I'm better." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" Right? And I was like,
Yeah.
"I'm fine. Look at me. Like,
Yeah.
look at me move." And
Wild.
it was gone. And
Yeah.
that was like 2 years ago. And it has not come back until just this last weekend. I did my first TRE. I don't know if you've ever done that, but it's like a tremoring process.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I did that, and something, and I had this like massive emotional response to it.
Yeah.
And the muscle that it's impacting is your psoas muscle, which is like your fight flight muscle, which is right in your lower back and hips and pelvis.
Yeah.
And right afterwards, as soon as we rolled over onto our sides, I felt that sciatica back, and I was like, "Oh no, like what's," but what was interesting was that it was back for like 10 minutes. Right? And then it was fine. And then the next morning I got up and it was back for like 30 minutes or so. And then it was gone, and it hasn't come back since. And so it's interesting to me to like observe that and to be present with that shift that finally cleared it for me 2 years ago. And then to like notice it back after this big emotional processing that I was doing with this TRE process. And yeah, so it's just really interesting what can happen when you're really with something in that way and committed to that presence. And the reason that I share how many layers I did prior to that miraculous instantaneous shift is because I often think that these miraculous instantaneous shifts are not as instantaneous as we perceive them to be.
Just like growing a business.
That's right. So I always think it's really important, or like the most honorable, to share that piece.
The pre-work, the foundations.
Yeah. So that people don't hear this and go, "Oh my gosh, she's a miracle worker and it shifted in an instant. And how come these things aren't shifting in an instant for me?" Like, well, because there's like layers upon layers that I did before that instantaneous moment. Right. Yeah. So I think,
and now it's this beautiful wisdom that your body holds and knows how to get your attention with. I often find like I have been having a little bit more heartburn again lately, still just like every few weeks to once a month-ish, like nothing major. And when it comes, I'm always like, "Oh, hi, I'm listening. Like, what are you trying to tell me?" And I think that the last couple times have been worse flare-ups because I didn't want to look at what it was telling me. Yeah. And it was like, okay, I'll be louder then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll make you notice me. Exactly.
No problem. I can do this worse. This can feel worse.
I know. So, what are the other seasons for you, and what does that
Mhm.
look like internally?
So spring is that burgeoning energy, that burst of new life, that is like hope and excitement and anticipation for me in spring. Lots of ideas flowing. I often like to map this onto my menstrual cycle because I really do, now that I've been paying attention to it, I really notice those few days, like 3 days ish after my bleed, I start to be like, I am a wellspring of energy and ideas, and and here they all come. It's a great starting projects time, and yeah, that kind of looking ahead, planning, anticipation. And summer is it's sensual and it's social. There's this sense of, magnetism or vibrancy. There's energy for sure, but it can border on frenetic almost, I find, especially if we think about how bright it is in the actual summer, and how we don't sleep as well because there's fewer hours of darkness, and all of the plans are being made because it's the little blip of warm weather for a lot of us, especially where I'm at, that we're like, go out and do all the barbecues, and you talk to somebody in March and they're like, I can see you in September
Yeah,
because everything's
exactly.
planned. So there is that kind of energy to it. But there's also this like fertile, abundant, um, sensual energy as well. It's that mother energy, that creative birthing things out into the world, ovulation energy. And then autumn and winter are both my favorites. Autumn is it's like a sigh of relief. It feels like I love summer. Growing up, I always thought spring was my favorite season because we had all of summer ahead of us and the excitement was there, and I loved the heat of summer. And now that I'm getting older, I like when those first leaves were on the ground and the light is
I
getting less, I was
know.
like, oh, somebody posted the little gif of, I think it's Saturday Night Live, and the sweater weather. Sweater weather, sweater weather.
Oh,
And I was like, yes, I'm going to put a sweater on, and I love it. And it's that invitation to turn inwards and take stock, um and reflect and release, and yeah, just that like sigh. There's this spaciousness about it for me, and that knowledge of like relief at the end of the bright, hectic, amazing summer energy. And so internally that looks like a really good time to be, detail work is part of autumn energy. It's a good time to, like, we're in Virgo season, right? Virgo, yes. Back to school, Virgo, like
yep.
detail oriented. That's all really aligned with that kind of autumn energy where details make sense. We're getting things in order. We're doing that autumn cleaning before we go inside to hibernate for the winter. I think there's spring and autumn mirror each other in some of those ways of like making room for the next season to come in. And it's a really contemplative and reflective time. There's also that real sense of community, because in times past we had to come together as communities. The three harvests happen in autumn: August 1st, September 20th to 21st-ish, and then October 31st are all those three harvest celebrations where the communities would come together, and you'd all like, oh, Bob's field is ripe, so we're all going to go harvest there and help him
Mm-hmm.
process that food so that it lasts us the winter. And then, and next week my field's going to be ripe, and we're all going to come and harvest there, and canning and processing and drying and curing our foods in order to be able to get through that long, dark season.
I just wish we still lived in
I
that
know.
way. Like,
I
I
know.
so ache for that. I
Mm-hmm.
ache for that.
Yeah, me too. And lots of humans do. Like everyone I talk to, I think every woman who's inside my year-long mentorship program is like, let's all just go live on a commune somewhere. And the realities of modern life make that really hard to do. And yes, there are also parts of it that like we've literally lost a lot of the skills that were required to be able to live like that.
Yeah.
And there's a reason that it calls so deeply to so many of us. And I think that comes back to like the beginning of our conversation. We're
I
overstimulated
know.
at all
I
times.
know. And so disconnected.
Yeah.
Like, not only from each other, but from ourselves.
Yeah. so that our bodies have to scream with heartburn or sciatica to get our attention because we can't hear it when they're whispering.
Yeah. And that this also brings us full circle is people are so uncomfortable with any sense of discomfort. Like our capacity to be uncomfortable is so limited. And so people don't tune into themselves and listen to their bodies when they're whispering because it's uncomfortable. And when you're not used to it, I mean, sometimes it's really uncomfortable and I'm very practiced at it. And so when you're really new, I can remember when I love sharing this, how I learned to meditate, because I think it's really relatable. And I think that when I'm like 10, 12, whatever years into this that I am, it can feel like it's not relatable anymore to some people who are just beginning. But when I was first learning to meditate, I had to use the Headspace app, and I had to go through their like week-long like learn to meditate process over and over again. And it was excruciating. Okay. Like it was so excruciating. And they're only like a few minutes long in the beginning. Right. And I'm sitting there like, oh my God, this is so uncomfortable. And it's so uncomfortable to sit still for this few minutes. And the thoughts that are popping into my head are so uncomfortable to bear witness to. And I can't make my mind stop. And how does anybody like this? What am I doing?
Yes. Yeah.
And now, like, oh my God, it's literally my lifeline.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's my anchor.
So interesting how, and again, it's a practice. I think that's that important piece of your story and sharing it is we're not good at any, and not that you can be good or bad at meditation, I don't think, but we don't just, pick up a flute and start playing a sonata. We have to learn where to put our fingers and which buttons to press. And the same goes for any practice, whether it's meditation, whether it's tuning in and living more cyclically, or listening to ourselves, or working on our boundaries, or trying to change a habit that we recognize as being harmful, but are struggling to change. Like all of it takes creating new neural pathways, and that takes time and repetition.
And it takes discomfort.
And discomfort. I freaking hate being bad at things. I hate being bad at things so much. And
it takes discomfort. If we never learn how to sit with ourselves and like how to be with discomfort, like you would never learn how to do anything new.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. And it's so uncomfortable. Yeah.
Oh man. So thank you so much for that whole like breakdown of the seasons. And I really hope that for some of our listeners who are new to this and like who are hearing this sort of stuff for the first time, I really hope that they will sit with that in a different way. And, without even the need to change anything, but just to bring an awareness to like, what are they picking up on as the seasons start to shift, and what is coming alive in their system, and what stories are they telling themselves about what they need to do and when and for what reason and in what season, and as well as just inward, like, are they just in an inner winter right now? Is it just time to slow down and to pause and to hibernate for, maybe an extended period of time, right? Maybe it's not a couple days, right?
Yeah.
And I just really hope that they kind of invite themselves to just be with that, like without the need to change anything, without the need to control it, to just allow it to be there with them and to be present to it and to bear witness to their own experience, and then to see what shows up when they do that. Right?
Yeah. I often say, let yourself be right. So if it feels, when you start questioning, am I doing this right? Am I making things up in my head? Is it like, should I still feel this way? Can you just let yourself be right? Because there's a part of you somewhere in there deep down that knows for sure. There always is. And practicing listening to that voice and allowing it to be right is such an important skill, I think.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. That's powerful. I don't think many of us do that.
No, I say the things I need to hear on repeat, hoping that eventually I will embody them all
You'll
fully.
absorb it. I know.
And in the meantime, I get to help some other people along the way.
Oh my gosh. So you also have just written a book.
Yes, I have.
So I don't want to let that slide. I don't want to leave that out here. That's big news. I was on your pre-order list. I will be honest that I haven't read it yet because I'm still in school right now. And so I'm reading like things on polyvagal theory and internal family systems and parts work. And I'm really deep into this like deep level of reading right now. And I'm really looking forward to being able to come out of that and read some stuff that just brings me joy. And this stuff brings me joy, but it's so heavy.
Right. It's
and
dense.
It's so intellectual.
Yeah. Well, yes, I hope that my book can provide that. It's called, for people listening, it's called Awaken to the Magic Within, Rediscover What Your Bones Remember. And it's short. It's an interactive multimedia ebook. Say that 5 times fast.
No kidding.
It's about 50 pages. That includes the glossary of terms at the end. So it's really meant to be, a lot of the themes that we talked about today actually are in there. It's about my story, my journey from atheist to witch, from being completely disconnected from my body and the wisdom of my bones, my ancestors, the connection to the magic around us, and how that has shaped my trajectory and my path and connecting in. And then it's full of there's some tools in there. There's links to guided visualizations that I've created. And there's a sneak peek into Unleash Your Inner Witch, which is my signature kind of 6-week program to help women come home to themselves, really, and connect to that witchy wisdom that lives inside all of us, which if the term witch turns you off, everything I've talked about today, I think, falls under witchcraft. So it's definitely not the pointy hat and broomstick style witchcraft, though it can be that too.
And hopefully anyone who is turned off by the term witch will come back and listen to our other episode.
Yes.
Because you dive so much deeper into what you believe the term witch means and what that means to you. So
and I go into it in the book as well and talk a little bit about the history of the word witchcraft and the witch trials, and it's really pretty. It's a very pretty book. They did such a beautiful job of creating it. Look, it reads more like a magazine, I think, than a book, but I'm really pleased, and it's free. I really wanted to spread the message. And one of the things I often say is I want to be like the pebble in the pond that creates a ripple of rest and women reclaiming their worth and their power and their voice and all of those things that so many of us have lost. And so, that's free and available on my website for anyone who wants it.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Yeah, I can't wait to read it. And I can't wait to see it in the hands of others.
Yeah.
Oh. And what else are you working on right now? You're going to be, when this episode releases, you're going to be entering your new cycle of seasonal work. Is that right?
Yeah. So as this airs, I don't have the date yet because I'm not planning that far out. We're recording back in September. But I always run a Sacred Start workshop, which is another free offering in January, towards the end of January. And that's building on the knowledge that for so many of us, it is this sense of a new start in January. But after we take a pause and a breath, and that's really about setting up ritual in your day-to-day, like a sacred start to your day or your year, and starting to be able to weave some of those practices in a way that feels sustainable, and that you're not like adding 5 new things you suddenly have to find time for. So ritualizing things you already do and cultivating those practices, and noticing the magic that's present already in life. And it falls right before we enter the next cycle of the Wise Wild Woman mentorship, which I began in 2025, with February 1st was when I opened the doors to that program to begin with. And it's all sorts of things, but it's a seasonal program to return you to your wise wild self, really. Yeah.
Beautiful. And that's, I think, if I remember correctly from our last recording, like you can jump into that for one season or for
Anytime.
all of them, right? Is
Yeah,
that?
yeah, you can. I've shifted recently. I've been talking about it more as a full season or a full year commitment. And if anyone's ever like, I can't commit to a year, 100% a season is on the table. I find so much of this work, it just takes a time to steep. Like we have to
Yeah.
experience that full turn. And I don't want anyone to feel like they can't have access to that space if a full year commitment is too much for them. So yeah, both are available for sure.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm just launching my new, and again, like we're recording in September, so I'm just launching my new offering, the seasonal pause. And
Mm.
it is aligned with like the equinoxes and the solstices for me. And but they are going to be for now, like one-off events
Mm-hmm.
for each turn.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat with that as well, like that I would really love to see this be a full year thing, that I would love for people to come to all four of them to really experience that entire cycle and to be able to connect with that within themselves in a different way instead of just like hopping like into one or the other.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, my soft launch is going to be this autumn, which
So
will have
fun.
already passed when this episode releases. And yeah, I sat with that idea and I ended up going with like the one-off kind of
Mm-hmm.
situation for now in hopes that people will come and then it's going to be quite accessible and people will be able to then decide if they want to come to like future
To
ones. But I
all of
really
them.
do hope to see some people continue through the full year and then not only like really be able to connect with themselves and that the cycles of nature in that way, but also with each other and
Yes,
with community
yes,
in a
for
different way,
sure. And that's a big
right?
part of why I'm leaning more into that year-long commitment inside the mentorship. I hold Wheel of the Year ceremonies, so I have 8 of those a year, and people can choose to just come for one. I have a package where you can come for all 8, or they're also part of everything that I do as part of the Wise Wild Woman mentorship. Basically, that's an all-access pass to everything.
Yeah, that's
But
how
there's
I'm
that
about
sense
to
of
be.
continuity.
Yes. I love that sense of continuity. That's what I'm going to be launching soon is more of that membership based, community based
Mm-hmm.
program
Mm-hmm.
where it's the all access pass to all of the things and
Yeah.
more. And
Yeah.
then within that, if you're not in that, you can like hop into certain aspects of it,
Yeah.
as one offs. But if you're in that community, that's what I really want to build is like that community sense where
Yeah.
people are growing alongside each other.
Yeah. It's been such a privilege. We're coming on just over half a year now of since I started this mentorship. And it's so beautiful to see the connections and the growth and the like just the shifts and changes and awarenesses and everything that the women inside are experiencing with each other too.
I know. And that's just
Yeah.
something that we lack now that everything is kind of online, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so what I have been playing with is like these one-off events, and I used to run my events in person in town and
Right.
have shifted everything online. And so then you have these like one-offs where you're in Zoom and you don't really necessarily get to know people, but in the more community-based like membership or mentorship platforms that I've been a part of as a student or a
Mm-hmm.
participant, you just get to know people in like such a different way, and there's like chat functions and you can talk to each
Mm-hmm.
other and leave comments, and you're not just like showing up on Zoom and then leaving and never connecting again.
Yeah.
And so that's been a call deep within me for a few years now. And then my health situation really like halted everything for me to go through a lot of my own inner processes before releasing that. And anyways, it's coming soon. So
Exciting.
yeah.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need
Well,
more spaces
thank you
like that.
so much for being here. Thank you for coming back and for joining me again. I was so Excited to have you back and excited when you said yes. And I just think this was such perfect timing for a January release for you to share all of your cyclical wisdom.
Thank you for having me back. It was a delightful conversation. We've managed to make 2 hours fly by.
I know.
Like,
I always think I'm going to try to keep these episodes short for like the listener's sake.
Yeah.
And it never quite happens.
Yeah. You know what? There's lots of people who like really long form podcasts, so we're here for
Yeah.
you.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you
you're
so much.
welcome.
As always, I am trusting you to take what resonates with you and leave the rest behind. Please be sure to hydrate and care for yourself well, as any of the energetic transmissions, meditations, or self-healing prompts integrate into your system in the coming days or weeks. As with all the work that I do, I ask that this aligns for the highest and best of everyone involved, and I trust that you will only receive that which is in true alignment for you at this time. If this resonated with you, I invite you to consider giving back through your likes, ratings, comments, shares, or subscribes, as those help so much on these platforms. If you're ready to go deeper than what these platforms can provide, I offer ceremonies, workshops, guided practices, and more at www.denisealyssa.com. I look forward to connecting with you there.